everybody knows that if you think about, they may have a preference for how they learn, and that's what learning styles speak about. It's a set of assumptions that, guide how a person senses or perceives information, and that really speaks to how their brain processes it and is able to recall and how they organize it. And I think we all could, when we ask people off the bat, do you know your learning style? They will usually say, yes, I'm this and I'm that. And they will usually refer to what we call the VARK model, right? But truth is, everybody's learned differently. So, I'm excited to see what people would have shared from the poll and to understand what the VARK model looks like.
Yeah, but when I think I only heard about VARK as an adult, but now VARK seems to be a catchphrase because it's moved beyond. I think in teaching college, people used to learn about that, but it's now moved beyond, just teaching college, and general public tends to know. Even I feel little children probably know what VARK is. The other day I was enrolling my daughter into a class and I was asked, what is her learning style?
Oh,
right?
wow.
So VARK has become it's become almost a catchphrase. But when we look at VARK, we of course look at the visual, the auditory, the read, write, and the kinesthetic, right? But what does that mean? What it means is that someone who's a visual learner, they learn from graphical representation of information. So you can give them graphs, you can give them charts, you can give them pictorial depictions of information, and that's what sticks with them. Are you a visual learner, Ken?
I actually am. I like to see things, and what really captures my attention is when things are colorful, when font is different, when the texture of what I'm seeing is has depth to it, and that helps me see the layers of things. So when I look at a diagram, when I look at a handout, when I look at a flip chart paper or some sort of display, even a PowerPoint, it has to capture my attention by those things. Even as simple as the layout. Is it too heavy to read? Is it spaced out properly? Those things my eyes really cue into.
Right, and that's so interesting because I was going to say to you that I am not a visual learner. So if I'm reading educational texts in particular, I skip past diagrams. So I skip past all the charts, and if it's written in narrative, I would read the narrative, but the charts don't stick for me. However, that last point that you made is important because layout is important to me. Mm-hmm. Layout is very important to me. So I think when we do the VARK questionnaire as well, what we recognize is that every learner has a little bit of each of the different learning styles in them, but one may be predominant, or people like Ken who tend to be dual in everything may have two dominant learning styles, right? The auditory learner is, I would say, almost the polar opposite of the visual learner, because they are the learners who they sometimes just need to listen to a lecture. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who love YouTube videos to learn from, right? So they like that kind of learning. They can sit in a lecture and they can just listen to the lecturer, or in a session in a class, or they listen to, those are probably the people who listen to audiobooks instead of read audiobooks.
I know you're not an audiobook listener per se, but because it also helps when you can identify what is said in the way it is said. So people learn from, like, you'll find that these people are usually in a conversation, they'll be like, tell me about something, or let's talk it over. Because by talking, they get to capture what the imagery is from the sound. So, as I said, the music, the spoken word, whatever noise, or let's say use an activity, and the activity has an element of sound in it, that really gets their attention. They pay particular focus on something like that over, let's say, a visual learner.
Yeah, and those are the people, guys, who when you were doing your degree right outside the exam room, they're the ones who come to ask you a question to talk it through, because they just need, and it lodges in their brain, right?
Yes.
Ken, I'm really interested to talk about how that is applied to when you're planning your sessions, but I feel maybe we could talk about it after we go through all the different types. You know why? Because I'm really excited to talk about the read-write, because is me. I am a read, write learner. You give me text, I'm going to read it. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to make notes in a separate book plus on the text. And then I never have to open it again because it's now lodged in my brain. I remember it. Read, write people are like that.
What's interesting is that people who have that preference of modality for learning, which is read, write, usually the ones at the end of a Zoom call or a Zoom workshop would say, don't forget to send me the PowerPoint. Don't forget to send me the resources. Don't forget to send me this, because they want to follow up the learning of the engagement with the words. But what's interesting is that, you know, the PowerPoint is where the text is all visual, and that's a mix of it. But I know you have a particular dislike for the use of PowerPoint because of how people have been using it in the past.
Exactly. So, you know, there's use of PowerPoint, and there's overuse of PowerPoint. I mean, oh gosh, why are you coming with, I was in a class the other day, over 100 slides.
100 slides.
Over 100 slides in a 90-minute class, right? That is too much. It overwhelms the learner. What about the different types of learners? Are they really engaged when you use only PowerPoint packed with information? And then sometimes you have to zip through those PowerPoints because you don't have enough time to get through them. Interestingly enough, I am not one of those read-write learners, Ken. So I don't need your PowerPoint after. I saw it in the presentation, and that's enough for me, right? So I guess we all kind of different. Personality comes in as well into learning style, because we are not, we are multifaceted beings, right? So different things would affect how we learn. And then there's the kinesthetic. You know, I wish I was one of those people. I think that's the most interesting learning style. The people who learn hands-on. And this is why I love facilitation, because it allows for so many opportunities for kinesthetic learning, because we subscribe so heavily to that idea of experiential learning. So we immerse people into experiences, and it's that very immersion that helps many people to learn, right? Yeah. And then we add the read-write through the use of the, well, in person, the flip chart board, right? Or in the sessions, we use the whiteboard, we use the mural, we use the Miro, right? We use the Google Docs to get people to write. We use the PowerPoint slides.
Well, only if the PowerPoint slide has an element where they can plug in their own information or add to it, because that's how you get to be tied into the kinesthetic. If they don't do something with it, then it's not a kinesthetic point of view for them to learn. Because remember, this is how, so when you hear people say, let me try, they want to try, they want to apply something. You give them a task. It's always about a task-oriented process for them, because they always want to do, and that's how they learn. They learn by the fumbling and the teaching process of just going through it and then realizing what's happening, and they pick up momentum. So that's the most interesting thing about a kinesthetic learner for me.
Yeah, but you know, when you talk about the 4 learning styles, it can sound almost like, how do I incorporate all these learning styles into one little class or one little session? And it's easier than it sounds. It sounds difficult, but it's really easier than it sounds, because as we said, you can emerge the learners into an experiential activity. You know, I've been in workshops where we've played red light, green light, 1, 2, 3, right? And then you take that activity and you link it back to something. You link it to communication, you link it to conflict, you link it to something, right? And then you use your whiteboard, you use your whatever in the virtual space to get that visual and that read-write out, right? You use your videos, you use your YouTube videos, your whatever types of videos to get the auditory learner in. And the auditory learner is already in because they're hearing the sound of the voice, and they also love that engagement and discussion. Let's discuss it. Let's brainstorm it, right? So you can actually use all 4 learning styles in a class or session or presentation that is as short as 30 minutes.
Yeah, and when you say you can use it, you should use it. And
right.
why you say you should use it is simply because you have already identified your learning styles. I know mine. And as the facilitators, we want to ensure that the audience's learning styles are taken into account. So you may have say out of 10, 15 persons, you may have a certain percentage that is visual, auditory, read, write, kinesthetic, but you don't know when you meet them. Nobody goes into a session assessing their audience to the point where tell me your learning styles as you come into the workshop, the presentation, or whatever. So therefore, you have to cater for all of them, because at some point, somebody's attention may be stretched and need to be reset. So therefore, that's why you have the different elements to capture, because life is multimodal, and therefore learning has to be multimodal.
That's a really good point, Ken, because I flash back to a workshop that I think I led that workshop some years ago. And in getting the feedback, the participants really enjoyed it. In getting the feedback from them though, they indicated that they would have liked to have seen more PowerPoint. I used none. I use no PowerPoint. So your point is very valid, because what it says is that even though we have preferences as learners and as leaders, we still need to take into consideration the fact that the people in the room with us all have different learning styles, and chances are we have all 4 learning styles in the room with us.
Yeah. So when you use when you use one that incorporates all, there's going to be the affirmative of the person to say afterwards, let me get the PowerPoint. Or can we talk about it a little further? Like, at the end of the session, there'll be persons who stay back because they want to ask, or they want to have that auditory discussion. They want to engage at it. Or somebody will ask about what are the logistics of that activity that you use, because they want to see how the mechanics of it work, which is the kinesthetic.
Yes. Yeah.